I want to share with you about a vision that I received just the other day. Now, I've had a lot of visions about what's going on planet Earth, and it always gives us really good insight into where we are. It's like a little snapshot of what's going on. Here is what the snapshot looked like. Planet Earth. And around planet Earth, we've got this lovely little vine, little green vine, sort of these tendrils, you would call them, right? These fresh shoots of the vine just gently wrapping themselves around the planet. But something did feel quite off about it. Something felt like, I don't think that should be there. But I watched the vision unfold. And as it did, those tiny little fresh green tendrils became very thick and very dark very quickly. And then I realized, isn't that just the nature of darkness? It always poses as something beautiful, as something innocent, as something that could never do any harm. But as this vine grew, it began to constrict upon the planet, and what was once these fresh, tiny little delicate green tendrils, they became these hardy, thick wood-like stems, vines wrapping around the earth, constricting. What was interesting for me, though, as I watched this was, number one, I had no fear. And that really gave me a very good hint as to what I was really seeing. I got then to zoom in and see the human beings on the surface. And when I saw the human beings on the surface, I saw what you would expect, right? Because nothing can happen at the planetary level that is not happening at the personal level. At the personal level, people were being constricted just like the planet was. So darkness kind of coming out of all of the hidden places, wrapping itself around the individual human, and the individual human feels what when this takes place? Constricted, pressure, stressed, anxiety, exhausted, all the things that you're going to feel if something is pushing in on you, squeezing your life force from you, because that's what darkness does. Darkness feeds off of the light. And it has no way to maintain itself. It has no way to sustain itself. But it needs a very, very specific frequency. So I'm going to talk more about that frequency in a moment. But if you got the two really important parts of the visual, number one, no fear. And number two, the individual humans all had exactly the same thing as the planet did, vine wrapped around them. But this is the important part. Not everyone was affected by it. Not everyone felt the pressure, the constriction. What was that about? Okay, so the calibration. I said to you moments back that darkness can only feed on a specific calibration. Kind of like you have a specific food that's going to feed you and you can't eat poison. You can't eat what's toxic to you. Well, what's toxic to darkness is pure light, potent light. And what is pure light? What is potent light? And how is light different from any other kind of light? Are you telling me that there's different kinds of light? Well, yes, actually I am. Because everything on planet Earth exists in gradients. So by gradients, what I mean is, we talk about the third dimension. We talk about the fifth dimension as if it's one place. It's not one place. 3D has many, many rungs, layers, octaves to it. Very much like a ladder with steps in the ladder. And so at the lower level of 3D versus the higher level of 3D, you've got two very, very different outlooks, two very different ways of being. The higher level of 3D, which is now going to be very close to 4D, is a much more ascended or much more evolved 3D. And so we go into 5D. Same thing at the upper level of 5D. 5D starts looking a lot like 6D. And so we go. But the same is true for dark and light. Dark can be the blackest black, the darkest dark, which, by the way, is what? It's separation, it's unconsciousness, and it's a desire for preservation through separation. The darkness that we have here in the false matrix, like everything in the false matrix, is very unnatural. ... What does that mean? It means even the light that we have here on the false matrix is very unnatural. What is she talking about? Dark and light exists in gradients as well, by the way. So that means we've got the thickest, densest layers of darkness, and we've got the brightest layers of light. But this is what's unnatural. They're very separate from each other. In the natural universe, in the organic creation template, Dark and light is not separate. And in fact, you don't even refer to dark and light because you don't see it in any separate form at all. By the way, those are my dogs in and out in case you hear it. I'm not sure what gets picked up on the microphone. See, there, that's the barking. The false matrix held these two as opposing forces, not complementary forces, but dark and light. In the perspective of the false matrix, these were two opposing forces because light believed that darkness could taint it and it could lose its purity somehow. And dark believed that light, in the presence of it, that darkness would cease to be, which, by the way, is true. Darkness gets absorbed into light. That's exactly what happens when you put a light on in a room. The darkness ceases to be. So the false matrix version of dark and light was impregnated with misunderstandings. Remember, everything in the false matrix is inverted. That means it's an upside down understanding. Where in the natural universe, dark and light are complementary, not separate. They are unified. They are parts of the whole. What we've done with dark and light on planet Earth is kind of like saying man and woman, male and female, one is good and one is bad. Well, I suppose we've done exactly that. We've done that with race groups. We've done that with genders. We've done that with national identity. We've done that wherever we have a label, we've created one-upment, which is just part of the insanity of the false matrix. But nonetheless, when we've got these gradients of dark and light, we can now have light that's very dense in places, very light at its lightest and very dense at its lowest frequency. And at that dense lower frequency of light, it's very similar to the highest level of darkness, right? Because darkness is also a gradient. We've got the blackest black and we've got a very light gray, if I could put it that way, just to give you a visual of what it might look like. So as we go into the lighter aspects of darkness, we get a darkness that is less dense. Now, the darkness that is less dense and the light that is more dense, these two start to resemble each other. And that, by the way, is why you get many people, maybe you've met a few, maybe you've seen some on TV, that appear so loving and caring and nice and trustworthy, and they land up being so corrupted and so not of the light that you wonder, but why does that person look so pure? Well, now you understand. Dark and light at those gradient levels where you've got the lightest dark and the darkest light, they really resemble each other. They're not the same, but they start looking very, very similar, and we can easily mistake that. And that's why we easily mistake people for being good people when inherently they're not. And we go, why didn't I see that before? Look, the truth is, at their core, everyone is good. At their core, it's the truth. Everyone is made of light at their core. But how deep the corruption goes, how deep the programming of the false matrix goes, because what that's about is a place where we truly lose ourselves, the false matrix. That's a place where we can become something so unlike who we are in essence. So in essence, everybody is of purity because everybody is of God in essence. But there are beings who, even at the level of the archons, even at the level of the Anunnaki, even at the levels of the reptilians, at the level of all of these beings who we know to be not so kind to humanity, putting it diplomatically, there are beings who can pose as being so loving and so benevolent and are anything but. It's how they get away with it. It's how they fool us. Darkness can only feed on the light that is the most similar to darkness. So basically what that means is it feeds on light that holds a lot of density still, where I was talking earlier about the gradients of light. Darkness cannot feed on pure light. Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting, so stay with me. Darkness cannot feed on pure light. What darkness can feed on is light that's obviously more dense. That is what we've all been holding. That's what we've all been playing with. That's what we were all born into in the false matrix, all the confusion, all the illusion, right? What we are now stepping out of, though, is exactly that fallen matrix. And within that fallen matrix, just by the way, there is more darkness on the planet than we've ever had to contend with before, because there's no more veils of separation between us and the astral, between us and the underworld. So darkness is very surfaced, and it's threatened. And like anything that's threatened, it's going to come at you. And that's exactly why darkness is on the attack. I've put videos out there on my channel that give more information about that. I've also got videos that are going to give you more information about who the archons are, the gods of the false matrix, videos about who is God. So there's lots for you to go and research. As the darkness, let's go back to the vision, as the darkness, the vine, starts really closing in around a person, and a person feels, we would call this dark night of the soul, this person just feels like, oh, there's nothing left of me. I am so shattered. I'm so exhausted. I'm so depleted. I am without vitality. I'm without life force. I got nothing left. When a person feels that way, it's kind of like something in them surrenders, and what that is the ego. And then what's birthed in its place is the true self, which is a being of true light, light at the highest form. And that comes into embodiment. And guess what happens at that level? At that level, the vine that was constricting around the human being, it's kind of like it passes right through the human, because the human is now pure light. In a way, it's like passing through a ghost. So it's got nothing to hold on to, therefore nothing to feed off of. And so that vine begins to constrict on itself, which obviously leads to its own self-destruction. And that's why I've often said, we're not here to take darkness down. We're only here to be the light. And in being the light, darkness will do what it needs to do, what it's designed to do, which is to be its own undoing, so that it can also have the relief of returning to light. It's just not going to do that voluntarily at this stage, and at least not most of darkness. Most of darkness in the false matrix is very invested still in separation. I know a lot of people have got very almost fantastical fairy tale like ideas about darkness, and they say, oh, darkness is just light in another form. That's all very, very true in the natural universe, but we haven't been in the natural universe. We've been in the false matrix, where darkness has been behaving very psychopathically, very abnormally, very dysfunctionally, which is why we've interacted with so many entities, so many narcissists, so many con men, so many lies. As all of those lies and deceit, however, start closing in on us, that's all the darkness closing in on us, it catalyzes a kind of a light that wasn't here before, because we've got a cosmic light pouring into the planet, which is of a higher calibration and a higher frequency than we've ever had access to before. I'm going to release another video. Watch out for it. It should come out in the next day or two. That's going to give you a snapshot, and this is going to be a very, very cool video. I'm so looking forward to recording it. It's going to be a snapshot of where the planetary darkness is. We're going to be able to see exactly where the architects of the false matrix are. Where are they actually? And what that means for us, because if we can see it, we're not going to fall victim to it. We're not going to fall prey to it. We're actually going to realize how very, very diminished it is. Here's something that I want to share with you. Remember earlier I spoke about, dark and light and the various gradients of it, just to give you an understanding of how this works. Something that I didn't mention to you is that when most people visualize that, imagine maybe you saw like a light square and maybe you saw a dark square. What most people don't know is that the dark square is teeny weeny tiny and the light square is absolutely massive, because we're used to seeing that when we see the yin and the yang, right? Yin yang, it's two equal opposites. That's not what darkness and light actually look like in the natural universe. In the natural universe, darkness is absolutely minuscule. It plays a very, very small role. In the false matrix, because everything's inverted, dark has played a very big role. Light has played a very small role. But we're in the process of bringing this all into balance and all into remedy now. We're walking each other home. Remember that. From my heart all the way into yours. Lots of love, everyone.